Welcome back, everybody, to the Law&Crime Network. I'm Rachel Stockman, and let's get right to it because we have a big case that we're discussing. It's a trial that we've been following out of Texas. Roy Oliver, the former police officer who is accused of intentionally murdering a 15-year-old boy, an unarmed teenager, Jordan Edwards. You see his picture right there. All right, I want to bring in Tiffinni Young, who is our freelancer who has been covering this case. She's been in the courtroom. She joins us via Skype along with my panel. Tiffinni, I want to hear from you first because this was critical testimony. Roy Oliver is able to tell his side of the story. Did you see the jurors' reactions? Were they buying it? What was the feeling in the courtroom as he was telling the story?
Yes, absolutely. Just before we returned from the break, Roy Oliver's attorney stopped by a couple of us that were standing there just talking in the reporters area to let us know that Roy Oliver was indeed going to take the stand. And I can tell you that after the defense closed their opening, and there was kind of this dramatic entryway into the defendant's testimony, it was climatic. It was intensity in the courtroom. As we look at the jurors, there are some who are focused intently on the defendant. There are some who are focused intently on the defendant's attorneys. Many of them you haven't really seen a big reaction from. You have seen some that have a look of puzzlement on their face, just a couple that you can tell are in deep thought about the words that are being spoken.
But so there wasn't an overall feeling of whether his testimony was to be believed. I think it's going to be more interesting, Tiffinni, when we get into some of the cross-examination and how Roy Oliver reacts to that and as he's getting some more of those pointed questions from prosecutors.
Absolutely. I believe so. And oftentimes the jurors are also focused on what Jordan Edwards' family reaction. You'll see them look over to the family sometimes to see what how his family's reacting.
So Edwards' family has been there the whole time. They were there for the police officers or the former police officer's testimony, Tiffinni?
So they haven't been in there the whole time. The stepmother was not in there for Roy Oliver's testimony this morning. Jordan Edwards' father was in there for testimony this morning. Just before the break, as Roy Oliver began to talk about what happened on that night, the father did excuse himself from the courtroom.
The father did? He didn't want to hear this. It was too emotional for him, clearly.
It was emotional, yes.
And what about, and we'll get to my panel shortly here, but I just want to hear from Tiffinni. You said the officer's family has been there the whole time as well?
So the officers, he testified this morning that that's his common law wife. She has been there. She is not there today since he's been on stand. His mother did walk in today just around the noon hour, so maybe 20 minutes or so before we took the lunch break. His mother did walk into the courtroom. And I'm not sure if there have been any other of the officers' family members that have been in the courtroom, but definitely those two have been there. And the dad, I think, has been there as well.
Saman, Dan, that's a bit strange. You know, you would think this is kind of like the pivotal day for Officer Oliver, former Officer Oliver, where he would need support from his family. I find it a bit odd that, you know, according to Tiffinni, they came in late, weren't there at all. What do you make of that? Dan?
Well, it's definitely strange. Maybe they had some personal reason, like he thought he wouldn't be able to keep his composure. He was very composed on the stand, and maybe he felt he couldn't be that composed with his mother sitting in the gallery. That's a possibility. But it is strange. You want your family there, both for the support and also so the jury can see you as a human being and not just as the evil defendant, which sometimes gets characterized by the prosecution. You want to humanize yourself, and having family there is part of the way to do that.
Saman, what does that tell you?
It is a little bit bizarre. I mean, we don't know what the dynamic is between him and his family right now. They may not want to be there and see him have to go through this right now. Like Dan said, it might be difficult for him to keep his composure. I mean, at the end of the day, we're dealing with someone whose life was taken. So they might not want to have to face that family too and be there at the same time. They might not feel comfortable in that environment. It has to be an uncomfortable feeling for everybody.
So, Tiffinni, let's talk a little bit about this afternoon. So we're in a lunch break in this Texas courtroom. And I assume Mr. Oliver is going to take the stand again. Did we get through all of the direct? I didn't hear quite at the end whether he had finished questioning the defense attorney.
So the defense attorney is still in the middle of his direct. What he said was, Judge, this is kind of the end of this line of questioning. I'm going to a new area. And so that's why the judge chose to go ahead and take the lunch break. So we will still be on direct when we return from lunch.
Any idea where he's going next with his direct?
That I don't know where he's going next. What we do know is, you all saw, we are anticipating the one expert. And what I can say is that, and you all have heard it as well, that they do anticipate the case wrapping up by this weekend. And it has also been said in the hallways there that there's a possibility that the jury would be sequestered this weekend if, in fact, the case closes tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll certainly be watching this very, very closely. Tiffinni Young, thank you so much for bringing us inside that courtroom and giving us some insight. What's going on in the jurors' minds? You know, where are they seeing, whether they're believing Roy Oliver or not? It's always a question, and you can guess and predict and try to speculate how they understood the testimony. But until you're actually in that deliberation room, you really have no idea. So thank you so much, Tiffinni, for joining us. And we'll be monitoring the feed out of Texas. As soon as we get that live feed back in, we will bring it to you. We're expecting the lunch to last another half hour. Roy Oliver will be back on the stand. In the meantime, a lot of other high-profile cases we're covering here on the Law and Crime Network. I want to say thank you to my guests for this afternoon, Dan Shore and Saman. They've both been with me for the last hour or so, and we appreciate their input. We'll be back in just a minute with more testimony.